You've almost answered the next question I had, but before we get to that, when you say the new left and the new right, just give me a sense of who or what you're talking about.
Sure. So go country by country, right? The new right is essentially the Republican establishment is dead in the water. They couldn't get elected if their life depended on it. Trump's taken over. Let's go for the new left here. So what's happening with the British Labour Party? The entire parliamentary party, all the MPs, hate their leader. Their leader was a guy who was put on the ballot basically as a sop to the left, and he ended up getting 60-odd% of the vote. All the establishment New Labour people, the membership hate them. Some of them couldn't even get into double figures. Now, in the aftermath of Brexit, the parliamentary party has decided to stab their leader in the heart and try and change it and get a new leader. Problem, you need to actually get the membership on board for that, and they're not going to play. So Labour just blew up. The new left in Greece, Syriza is an obvious example of this. They were the guys that said, no, 61%, we're not doing austerity anymore. Then the ECB turned off liquidity of their banking system, and they said, oh yeah, all right, we'll do it then, because they had no alternative, thereby undermining democracy and strengthening both the extreme left and the extreme right. Italy, you've got Renzi's in trouble, the centre-left guy, and although he didn't have a breakthrough this time, the Five-Star Movement's still there, the same with Podemos in Spain. In Scotland, the National Front plays a nice game, the Scottish National Party plays a nice game of being the anti-austerity party, mainly because they live off of English transfers, and now that's in doubt. What are they doing? They're screaming like blue murder to get into the EU. Sinn Féin in Ireland. Every country has an example of this. And it goes back to that story I told you. From the 55th percentile to the 87th percentile, people aren't doing well and have actually lost. Their wages have been stagnant. Their costs are going up. The cost to get into college, the cost of healthcare. Meanwhile, your wages, you're living on less and less the whole time. And you're angry and you're fed up with this and you want something different. These people may not offer real solutions, but at least they recognize the problem.
I mean, do you think that I guess the analogy would be, I mean, do you think there's anybody listening? Or is there even anybody there anymore? I mean, the analogy that occurs to me is, that you had 17 or 16 Republican primary challengers aside from Trump, and none of them could coalesce around anything. No one could recognize what was happening, and they all were acting in their own self-interest, which did not include being the one who would take Trump on head on until it was too late. I mean, do we have that same dynamic? Like, there's no one person or one entity or one group that's really at the wheel in any way. So you just have like a series of individuals who are just who share. The only thing they share is just a sense of very, very narrow self-preservation, and there's no one to respond to this.
Well, this goes to my earlier point about leadership. I mean, I was no fan of Mrs. Thatcher, but this wouldn't have happened on her watch. And what we have is, venal self-interest, basic masquerading as a political career. So, this is definitely a large part of the problem. But part of it is you reap what you sow. I mean, if you think about the Republican primaries, they've been throwing red meat to the base for 20 years, right? So, welfare queens, and then it's Mexicans, and then, remember Mitt Romney's wonderful policy of self-deportation? I mean, what's that? Once you identify other people as the problem, and when you forget, of course, that if you hermetically sealed the borders tomorrow, somebody's still going to be picking the tomatoes in Florida, and it's not usually going to be the Floridians. So, what happens when that happens? Well, basically nothing changes, and you realize that you've been sold a bill of goods, so you go bananas. You lose faith in these people, and they have every reason to do so. This is also affecting the Democrats. Why is it that young people are completely enthused about Clinton's candidacy? Because they look back to the 1990s, not with rose-tinted nostalgia, but as the period in which we had super predators, 3 strikes and you're out, globalization, the moment when NAFTA was signed. All of that's got the Democrats' fingerprints all over it. And this is where, as far as many people are concerned, when the rot set in.
Do you think that there's anybody in the, the financial industry? I mean, do you think that Hillary Clinton has an easier chance, or maybe she doesn't even hear this, but that somebody has an easier chance of saying to Hillary Clinton, this is all an indication of just exactly what you cannot get away with. I mean, are there any voices out there? I mean, I guess in this country too, that are delivering the message in a cohesive way? And do you think that there's any sense that anybody's listening? I mean, I guess I'm asking that question again.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to have to be more specific, Sam. I mean, let's rephrase that one. Is there actually a positive agenda? Well, you could point to Bernie's agenda, but the problem is, with all due respect, Bernie's too old, and the people who are voting for him are too young. And the problem with being too young is not enough of you to show up to vote. Right. Old people vote, and old people vote for security for their assets. They don't like change, they don't like foreigners, and when moments of uncertainty come along, they tend towards the right rather than the left. So, there is an agenda out there. But, again, let's think about how this plays out. So the one thing that's deeply troubling for me about Clinton's candidacy is the whole issue of the Goldman Sachs transcripts. Now, I've spoken to financial conferences. You can have my transcripts if you want. I'm not sure anybody took them, but if you can find them, I'm fine with it. I'll tell them exactly what I'll tell you. It's not a problem. But if you're not willing to release them, what that says to me is you must have been saying something like, we're all in it together. You're the wealth creators. There was too much credit. We need regulation, but we don't want to kill the business. In other words, exactly what they wanted to hear, and right. All of which would be deeply damaging if you're meant to be somebody who's going to take these guys on and regulate them in the public interest. So it seems to me that the political classes are completely compromised and discredited. And the one person who isn't, who's genuinely exciting, and I don't just mean too old in terms of like Bernie's an older guy. I mean, he's old in the sense that his population that he's attracting, people under the age of 35, they are not going to show up in enough numbers, and he's not going to mobilize people on the other side. So, that agenda just isn't going to have resonance at this point. And we see this in the Democratic primaries, sadly.
I mean, is there an agenda that addresses these issues? I mean, is it coming from anywhere, do you see in the context of our political landscape?
Not yet. I mean, put it this way, I read the Financial Times every day because I like to know what the 1% are thinking. And for the past several months, the Financial Times are running these series of articles. The robots are coming. And you've seen this all over the place. It's become a meme, right? So imagine how scary this is, right? So you're a working class person. You're in a state in the Midwest. You're working in an industrial job, and whoops, a private equity firm comes in, buys it, dumps credit on the books, firm goes public, your job gets shipped abroad. You're good, you adapt, you're fine. You get a job in a call center. That does someone else. It's less wages, but that works. Oh, then your call center gets shipped abroad, right? Well, never mind. There's always Walmart or an Amazon warehouse. Oh, but you know what? You're going to get stunned by a robot soon. This is what you're hearing. Where exactly is any politician, left or right, standing up and saying, you're actually a citizen of the United States. You are sovereign. You are the person that I am here to protect, to help, and empower. And instead of which, I'm trying to buy shares in the robot firm.
In the Financial Times, are they saying, like, are you ever seeing any opinion pieces like, hey, this could be a problem if we bring in all these robots, or is that awareness?
Absolutely.
Okay.
No. The one thing about the 1% is they're not monolithic. Many of them are deeply worried about this. But when you've set up a system in which market competition means that the first mover advantage is really strong, if I'm in a sector and I robotize, my profits go up. So all the investment comes towards me, you lose out, you're left carrying my lunch bag. The incentive is for everybody to do it.
Right.
And when politicians have basically boxed themselves into a logic of whatever markets want is good and whatever people want is some kind of error, then it's very hard for them to turn around and do anything about this.
Right. We would need some type of instead of government intervention on the side of sort of investing more in those robots, investing more in their people in some fashion.
Exactly. But to do that, you would actually need to engage with the people and not have some manufactured town hall with supporters bust in where you talk about nice, safe issues that you know that the staid middle classes over the age of 55 care about.
Hello, you. I'm Sam Seder. Looking for smart progressive talk that is occasionally amusing? Well, subscribe to our YouTube feed. Subscribe to our podcast. Like us on Facebook. And just generally enjoy us.